Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere. I appreciate it. Today we're continuing on with discussions about the Dylan Rounds case, where things are at, pending updates, still ongoing, as well as that. And as well, later in this video, we're actually going to be doing a direct response and analysis of Bette Hayward, because at least from my knowledge, realistically speaking, from my experience or lack of it, both visually and auditory, I've not seen Bette Hayward for about 2 weeks, I think. I don't know what's happened to Bette Hayward in terms of the Bette Hayward's account on YouTube. They've been very quiet, kind of like missing in action. Okay, missing in action. Hopefully people understand the title of the video why it says missing, because they've not visually been seen, their account, their presence, right? The thing is, okay, and we can get into it deeper later on in this video, I'm not an insider, am I? I'm an outsider. I'm a lone individual covering the Dylan Rounds case, so I'm not going to know everything going on behind the scenes, okay? But can at least try and make sense of the situation with Bette Hayward and do it later on. So be sure to stick around for this video. The initial part focusing on Dylan Rounds, maintaining a level of focus, trying to keep the case alive in some way, try and look at avenues which have not been looked at before or have simply faded away, and then we can move on to the Bette Hayward situation, okay? We can also look at the map as well, okay? One thing I just want to throw out there randomly is, obviously with what's going on in like the news, you know, across all around the world, or for the most part of it, with the Titan submarine, that exploration thing, going into the ocean, trying to go down to the depth to find the Titanic, but the Titan submarine, complications, it's gone very wrong, very serious, possibly fatal by now. I was thinking whether to do coverage on it or not, like a true video, but, you know, what hasn't already been said, right? I was going to think, could I think outside of the box? Could I look at it from a different viewpoint, perspective, or could I go on to like Google Earth, 360-degree imagery of the area and see if anyone's taken photos and uploaded them onto Google throughout the years, as in the ocean, underground, under the water, and just have a look at it. But none of that seems to exist. There's a lot of 360 dots scattered about in the ocean, but a lot of them are not available. They've been deleted. I think Google have removed them because they're probably prank troll ones. There are a few others, but they take you to like random places like in China or the US, and it's like, are you in some kind of underground base? No, you're just in a shop, a store, which has been misplaced into the ocean, kind of like some other locations we've looked at in the past. It's a bit weird, but of course there's already enough coverage on the news that's going on. I think maybe some people are jumping on in because it's like a bandwagon, it's like the latest hottest topic, so I'm not going to follow that route. Still focusing on Dylan Rounds, which may be becoming a niche topic subject by now, but still got to maintain that level of focus, right? Just like how one has done. Though, as we do go along in this video, be sure to share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the chat, whether it be about the submarine news, what's gone on there, or if it's about Dylan Brown's case, or other things in between, okay? So you can share your thoughts and reactions. As well, if you haven't already, make sure to check my videos out last night. Very easy to find. Just go onto my channel, check the video section out, and 4 videos are available to watch, all from yesterday. So yeah, that is true. Once again, this channel has broken a new personal record. Originally, it was 3 videos done in one night. This time round, I managed to make and upload 4 videos all in one day, right? A range of different stuff as well. So make sure to catch up on them. I know Bella V missed out on Miss T's birthday celebration bash video. Very disappointed, but I guess it is what it is. See, this is why Bella V had to make an alt appearance Bella V from wish.com, probably more reliable than the real thing, but it is what it is. That's why appearance was made last night. If anyone is confused as to what I'm talking about, check the previous videos out on my channel and you'll fully understand. And that can apply to new viewers as well, understandably. And I bet people in the chat also think, wow, this is kind of awkward in a way, in a funny way, is when we do these outside of the box videos, when we do these abstract art videos and some dodgy ones, if new viewers or people who are coming on over because of recent coverage of other videos by me, and then they see what's currently live now, they'll be thinking, am I in the right place? Am I in the right room? Because not long ago I was looking at a person covering a serious case with a serious straight face, etc. But all that can be said, one word: hybrid. That's it, hybrid. Okay? Hybrid channel. Different videos, different styles. Okay? So yeah, as well, because of last night, obviously I wasn't present for the last video because I was in bed by then, right? None of it was really planned. It was like all done on the spot, including the items, props. It got very hot because it just been a hot day, hot night, windows closed, wearing that clothing, bad idea, but it had to be done. Okay. As well, shout out to, is it Mimi? Proud Mimi? Proud Midi? Proud M. Shout out to them for last night, for their presence and super chat. It was very good of them. Wasn't expecting it, so it was nice of them. Okay, so shout out to Proud Midi, Mimi, Mommy, whichever word you use. I'll get the hang of it eventually in terms of saying the names correct. Okay. As well, last night I did do a bit of coverage on the Idaho 4 case, current situation there. Obviously, I'm not an expert on the case, nowhere near, but in terms of how I can sense and feel things ahead, I could probably do a prediction video or some kind of thoughts based on what could happen down the line. Maybe I will do that, incorporate it with a bit of a news article as well. Go from there, the twists and turns in the Idaho 4 case. But of course, just got to wait and see what the engagement is like on the videos. So it's worthwhile doing, so awareness can be spread effectively. If it doesn't quite perform, then it's like, well, falling on deaf ears, not working out. But as the highlight in the background, if it's already been covered by many people out there, it's saturated, but at least it's receiving coverage. So it's not really my role to have to go into it and cover it in that sense. With the Dylan Rounds case though, fading as time goes on, just simply because other channels can only cover so much. And that is really understandable, right? You look at Lance Kelly, obviously more recent, covering the Aidan Clune search and case. It's quite fitting because similar environment to what he's used to, location, reasonable, and just keep up what he has been doing all this time. Some people agree with it, some people don't, but you know what I'm saying. Do we talk about it today? Maybe. You know what? We'll talk about it now just because of the flow of this video. So hopefully you understand. Sometimes I do bring points up on the spot just in case I forget about them later on in the video, right? If an important thought comes to mind, it's worth just getting it out right now, okay? So speaking of Lance Kelly, what's going on with the cadaver dog? Whether they've bought it or not, where is it actually? Because it's not appeared in any of the videos, has it? Is that because the training is underway and it's just a time-consuming process? If anyone does truly know, feel free to explain it in the chat. If anyone watching right now or later on who originates from Lance Kelly's channel, whether you show resistance here or not, just feel free to explain the situation because it'll be appreciated. It will help improve one's understanding on the matter, okay? Just simply put, what's happened to the I can't get a word out. What's happened to the cadaver dog of Lance Kelly's, which he raised money for? Where is it? Because I've not seen it in any of the videos. I thought, because of the brief in the past about raising money to afford a cadaver dog, to go through the training, you know, get into it, learn, and then apply it and use the cadaver dog down the line to search for other missing people. Well, what's happened since? Well, Lance Kelly has moved on to other missing people, and that's Aidan Clune. But have the methods adapted? The usage of a cadaver dog? No. Still kind of like doing what they were doing before, which is okay. You know, they're out there, that's the main thing. But what about the cadaver dog? Shouldn't there be a greater focus on that for the cause of searching? I've not really seen it. Anyone in the chat, do you know? Do you have an answer? Feel free to explain, talk about it, right? For those that might say it was a scam, if you can elaborate and just provide a bit of a backstory, that will help as well, just so other people get a different point of view, perspective, right? Obviously, you've had Salty Pancakes with him raising money recently, about $10,000, and Kaylee doing the same thing. Don't know what happened with Kaylee's one, but it looked like Pancakes was mostly successful. He was able to get that drone with that money raised, but there might be the odd talk or rumour here and there in the background which suggests that he had the drone to begin with. I don't really know, to be honest. The only question I do ask is, when is it going to be used? When can it be used? And how exactly? And who for? You get what I'm saying? When it comes to Pancakes, although I won't know too much about his origins or background, I first came across him and his channel was first set up in the Dylan Rounds case. Trying to look for Dylan Rounds, was that Salty Pancakes motive? I don't know. I don't think it was directly looking for Dylan Rounds. I think it was more covering the case about Dylan Rounds and hearing it from different people's perspectives. The reason why I say that is because I don't remember seeing Pancakes going out there specifically looking for Dylan, besides going to like the Grangeshed property and looking about there and documenting it, what it looked like visually. Sure, it was all still very helpful. It provided boots on ground, eyes perspectives, so people could get a better feel for the area and understand it. As well, even Montello, because Pancakes was one of the first ones to go down there and document it in the name of the Dylan Rounds case. As well, Pancakes did interviews too, whether they went right or went downhill, it happened, okay? So, and then the other videos incorporated in between for most part of it up to now have been discussion ones, live chats, live call-in panels, making sense of the case, you know, making sense of it that way, theorizing different ideas, possibilities, and even more recently incorporating the use of Google Maps, kind of like what I was doing since day one. So I'd say Salty Pancakes, most of what he's done has been covering the case, or at least trying to cover the case, from different perspectives and environments, but not literally looking for Dylan Rounds in that sense. Maybe like the likes of Lance Kelly, Ty Corbin. Whether those attempts made were successful or not, whether people agree with them or not, you see a more direct focus there with the likes of Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly, because they were physically out there more than once and specifically looking for areas and outside of the box areas and maybe hard to reach and unlikely areas, but still searching to look for any clue, indication that Dylan was once here or is here. You get what I'm saying? With Pancakes, it was more so going to the Grangeshed property, going down to Dylan's farm. Was Pancakes as hands-on? Maybe not, which you could say is a positive, less disturbance to the environment. As said, it's harder to reflect back on now when the channel is gone, when the videos have been deleted, taken down because of the termination to his account. So it is harder, and it is unfortunate there because, okay, maybe Pancakes in the background can re-upload some videos like the interviews with Kurt Wadsworth, but what about the other videos, the more raw ones, the boots on ground type stuff? You get what I'm saying? That's why when it comes to like the drama situations, just got to be careful how you go about stuff so it doesn't drag everything else down with you, right? Because that's what's kind of happened elsewhere within this case, which is unfortunate, but there you go. So to refer back to the initial discussion, the drone that Pancakes now has, when it can be used, how is it going to be used and where exactly? If I had to guess or give my blind thoughts, I'd probably say the Aidan Clune case, because Pancakes has been talking about it a fair bit over time. The periods where he's not been covering Dylan Rounds, he's been talking about Aidan Clune. He's covered more videos on Aidan Clune than I have, for obvious reasons, right? It shows. So yeah, I think that's the direction. And if not Aidan Clune, could be somebody else within the area. I don't know about like across different states that could be pushing it, and maybe the laws differentiate when it comes to the usage of drones, but I guess maybe time will tell. I know at one point in the past, Pancakes did a trip out there, either Wendover or Wells, Nevada, one or the other, or nearby, and did some kind of pay-per-view or something, ticket sales, private videos, and all that. I don't really know. It's kind of like a secretive one, isn't it? So I guess it's done so you don't get infiltrators and spies, which might have occurred in the past. But all that deepness aside, I feel that when you start locking stuff behind some kind of paywall, although it can be successful and it is a method and it can be a proven method, when it comes to a case which at points in time, information should be of public awareness, public information, right? Kind of like how you get with some court documents, court updates, news updates, how they release stuff and how families do. And then you've got these third-party people in between that are gatekeeping some of the information. It just seems a bit problematic, in my opinion. I mean, it might eventually come out by other people, other sources. That's, I guess, fine. But when you start locking it behind stuff, it just seems a bit, I don't know. I don't know whether it's legal or illegal, but probably just not favorited by some people out there, which I can understand. But I can also understand that the method of doing what one does can be successful, so you got to acknowledge that as well. But as I said, I just say that when it comes to, could it be this case? Well, it could be, but it don't have to be about the theme of it. It can be people originating from the community and area and branching on off elsewhere. But I don't know. I just think maybe all these YouTubers, YouTube channels, new ones, upcoming people, the moment they get the chance to monetize or become the YouTube partner program, which no one ever uses that term or reference, which is a bit weird because that's the official reference, YouTube partner program, just like the Twitch partner program, right? You know, once you get to a certain point in stage, then you can do this, you can activate this, you can activate that. But it just seems like that's the first thing that comes on people's minds, that get to this amount of subscribers, get to this amount of watch hours, without thinking, let's cover something, let's look at something without thinking too much about what's ahead. And then once you get to the point ahead, then you can be like, oh, wow, this is great. And then it can also be acknowledgement to say, you're in the right direction, you're doing the right stuff, and just keep on going like that. People don't seem to have that mentality, right? And I've heard recently, and I don't know how true it is, but quite a few YouTube channels and news on YouTube have said that what did I call it? The milestone, the target of getting to a certain amount of subscribers and watch hours have been cut in half or something. And then you can join the partner program. They've made it easier now. And sure, I guess that could benefit people a lot more than usual, but I think it loses the sense of that feeling once you've crossed the line and you've reached that target. If it's made easier now, it's not going to feel as good. And if it's made easier for more people, then surely it will have an overall negative effect on channels that are already a part of the partner program. Because if more channels, more people out there are growing, then it's kind of like, do you call it disappreciating the value of it all? I don't know. I just don't think it's a good idea making it easier, right? If some people had to claw and scratch their way, you know, other channels out there, for many years, and now it's just been made easier for some nobody. I don't know, it seems a bit unfair, to be honest. I mean, in the past, I think they've already lessened the target to have memberships on channels. I mean, in the past, I'm sure that if you wanted channel membership, the option to join a person's channel membership, it had a requirement of about 25 to 30,000 subscribers, or maybe it was about 15,000 subscribers to about 30,000. Now, I don't think there is a requirement. So, well, maybe you've got to be a part of the partner program or something. I don't know, to be honest. But you get what I'm saying. Like, the moment something goes right, people just jump on it, and it's like, right, focus on this without actually focusing on the actual material itself. I think you've got to focus on the material first before you look at the other stuff ahead, right? And maybe the people in recent time and the channels out there in recent time, as for the background of them, the themes, it doesn't seem to be about missing people or cases, but they originated from that area, but they're not covering anything on it. They just branched off, which maybe it's a good thing. They do their own thing, go off in their own direction. Maybe it takes drama with them. Maybe that could be what's happened since. As drama has started in the community, it's kind of extracted itself over time. Maybe it's left a lasting impression, but it's kind of eased off. So maybe there's pros and cons to everything, I guess. But let's just return back to the Dylan Rounds focus so we don't slant away. Welcome if you have just joined. We are still talking about Dylan Rounds, don't worry. For those that are still watching, appreciate people's patience. Okay, I get that. But yeah, you put aside Pancakes, you put aside Lance Kelly, what about Ty Corbin, right? What's Ty Corbin been up to? Well, it looks like he's been in different areas, holidays, vacation, whatever you call it, or just visiting elsewhere, okay? I don't know about searches done. I don't think he has searched for Dylan Rounds recently. I did leave a comment on one of his recent videos just asking about, what about the cap? What about the hat, baseball cap? Any updates on it? The one that was found in Lucin? Still to this day, no update. No update at all. I don't know if Ty Corbin has seen my comments or not, but he's not responded, okay? Maybe things like this can take time, so it's just a waiting game. But I'm sure there's been instances within this case where things have been uncovered, found, and sent into the police or reported to the police and never truly updated, maybe because it just turned out to be a false lead, nothing, and there was no point covering it on YouTube. Maybe if it does turn into something important, then it will be covered online. But I think equally, if it is truly debunked, or if you yourself receive additional information which truly counters something, disproves it, whatever, then you should do a future update video. Even if it does take time, to provide an update video down the line is probably a good idea, right? But I don't think people always do that, so it's left like an open-ended question. It's an open-ended mystery, and you don't want lots of mysteries within a Dylan Rounds case, because then it just like clogs it up, and you want it to be as clear as possible. I mean, I know people have said take away what Candice Cooley says, ignore her and just listen to other bits of information. I think if you could just simply strip it back to the absolute basics of this case, maybe that would be easier for some people. I mean, if you could be very confident within the phone pings like Dylan's and Brenner's and whoever else, you just focus on that and even theorize, right? There's nothing wrong with theorizing as long as that's all it is. And sometimes those ideas can turn out to be reality, and I've proven it on my channel the way I've deconstructed and reconstructed the order of events and actions playing out on the maps, etc. So it can work out, it can be effective, but it's also clear and easy to understand that it's not at that moment 100% the truth. It's less damaging and problematic compared to people out there, maybe the family members that say this and say that, and we think that's how it is, and then it turns out not down the line. Just creates a bit of instability. And sure, there'll always be times and moments where you will get those mistakes, you'll get those odd inaccuracies, and that's fine, it can happen. But when it's over and over again, maybe by the same people too, it really doesn't help. That's when it becomes a problem, because then you kind of doubt what they say next when they could be telling the truth on that occasion. So yeah, no update from Ty Corbin. Anyone in the chat, let me know if you've heard any updates by Ty, the hat cap found in Lucin, and yeah, whatnot. I still think it's a bit odd how it was only just found like weeks ago, when Dylan's been missing for about a year now, and with the search and rescue groups being out there, the supposed 500 people hand in hand, arm in arm, going out there searching the fields. I'm surprised they didn't find it back then. Why only in recent time? Weezer did say that supposedly the cap was half buried into the ground, so maybe it was concealed. But why was it half buried? Did someone make an attempt to bury it, or was it more natural somehow? And you know what? Obviously it doesn't apply now because the cap was supposedly taken away by police, but if the cap was left there, with the flooding, what we've seen and heard recently in the area, would it have been impacted? Would it have shifted it, moved it elsewhere? Possibly, you never know. Or it might have just even uncovered it a little bit clearer and easier to see. I mean, you never know. I think one thing you got to look at is when Ty Corbin was passing it on about the story and the finding of the cap, we were referring back to how originally Kylie, but not spelled as the Kylie from Pancake's channel, a different Kylie, was driving along and then lost her hat when she was driving along the way. She had to stop, get out and go searching for her cap. She came across one, but not of her own. It was somebody else's, which in question if it's Dylan's or not. But you see how it happened, well, it could have happened 2 times, right? If Kylie lost her cap when driving with the window open and the wind blowing, caught it, knocked her hat off, fell out of the window, landed on the ground, then maybe the same thing happened to whoever's hat it belonged to, the John Deere one too. So it can happen to Kylie, then it could have happened to the previous individual where that John Deere hat was found. You never know, because it was almost like demonstrated live on the spot at the time. So yeah. So I don't know if we'll get any updates there. I still didn't really hear updates on the bra shed with Lance. I guess we could do a poll now. The poll can be, have you heard any updates on the bra shed, which Lance said he reported to the police? Well, that clothing was found in that like shack. Looked a bit dodgy, weird. Feel free to vote right now if you do know. And if you do know, feel free to explain it down below in the chat. Okay? So, I think that talk in place, what we can actually do is go on to the map, not the maps yet, we can go on to the comment section, okay? Just briefly catch up there from the last Dylan Rounds video I did, because the last day or two it's been on the Idaho 4 one. So we just check back to Dylan Rounds, see what was said there, answer any questions, and see if anything needs clearing up, okay? Here we are, just arrange it to the newest. As you saw, I probably should have done this right at the beginning, you know, like I normally do in my videos, but I guess there's no harm in changing it up. Maybe someday I could do a poll, possibly. Maybe not here, but more so on the channel community tab itself. I know Watcher Crazy has been busy with polls herself, but I'm sure I can contribute myself on my own channel. And just in advance, so you're aware of it in the future, I'll do the poll set as, when we do look back at comments and answer them, would you rather see that at the start of the video or later on? Just want to know. The reason why I've done it at the start of the videos is just simply to warm up, to get on into the main discussion and talking points. That sometimes the comments of the previous video end up linking with the video what we're doing right now, so it's best doing the comments first. And it also enables people to, you know, catch up if people are joining in late. I can understand the new important information being as soon as you load the video up. I get that. But then if people are joining in late, they're going to miss out on that stuff. So it's like a bit of a weird balancing act. So be sure to be on the lookout for the upcoming poll on my community page, and we'll go from there and see how things play out. Because the last time I did a poll, it was to do with, do you want to see me respond to comments in the chat as we do the videos along the way? And majority said yes. So that's what we've done ever since. Now it can be, do you want to see it from the start or later on into the video? Okay, kind of like what we're doing here. So we've got Badger. I'm all ears. That's good to know. The Badger ears are pointing up. Or well, did it point up? I don't know what Badger ears are like, but there you go. Well, this one, Annette Blackmon. What does she say? I think Annette might have been around during the Kenny Veach case. I could be wrong. They just seem a bit familiar. Anyway, let's see what they say. Annette says, from what I understand, those two men, the guilty-looking ones, Brenner, Don Hatley, Kurt Wadsworth, Chase Venstra, some of them you're talking about? You're saying that two of them are gay. And if they were together having dodgy time, that would explain their conviction for being innocent. Plus, I noticed nothing came about the remarks made about the father, inappropriately treating Dylan for being gay. Remarks from Dylan's friend and friend's family, the ones that Dylan used to sleep at their home many, many nights to get away from the inappropriate behaviour from being gay. And that would explain the mom's many misleading statements and why they really fired the investigator. Plus, isn't that why they moved Dylan away from their Mormon community? Dylan's grandparents were being affected by the gossip. Know nothing about any of that interview. I even went back to share and it is no longer on the internet that I could find. I first heard that statement on YouTube when this first happened. Everyone was covering it. I can't find it anywhere. Right, okay. I think the general theme from this is Annette Blackmon supports Jim Terry, or at least followed Jim Terry excessively in the early days of this case. Hence these theories and ideas coming about. I'd say if it had anything to do with the grandparents having to move away or being in an awkward situation because of Dylan and his preferences, then why did the grandfather help buy Dylan the farm in Lucerne 50-50? Why help? You know? Yeah, it's one of those where, is there enough evidence to back these things up? Not from the looks of it, right? We've heard these theories and ideas in the past. Obviously, they've been dismissed by Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds. You'd expect that anyway. But with time, it seems like the general public have also disagreed with this stuff with time. It's taken time, though. But I guess there's still people that lock onto the ideas, right? I mean, I don't know. It's a bit of a messy one. That's all I say. Let's just check the replies. Indiana. There is always a story behind the picture, and Dylan's life story isn't a pretty one. When it comes to Dylan's death, everyone is guilty in one way or another. Justin, I feel, regrets it all and is doing his best to make amends to Dylan in death. Laying Dylan to rest is now the least this family can do, and may Dylan receive the peace he deserves. Yeah, just let me know your thoughts in the chat with these ideas, I guess. And the reason, Annette, why you probably can't find some of these discussions or videos is because they originated from Jim Terry's channel, and Jim Terry's channel got taken down because it got terminated. So do the videos go as well. Okay. We got Cleo. Good video. Did you finish the apple? Yes, I did finish the apple a few days ago. What the hell? Tech. All I can say is that you're a tough man. So if anyone's wondering, Tech Covina, odd name, is basically Tom Evans. Okay, this is Tom Evans. I don't know why the username is like that, unless it's always been that way. If anyone can explain. Pack and Go, the one constantly changing their usernames, saying, I missed your live chat, very sorry. I'm having hail and crazy weather. It's been distraction. Warlike Raf, don't whip me. Have you ever been whipped yet? I don't know. We got Brad, saying, thanks a million, Raf. Will update shortly. West Aussie time. It's tough. Just watching in depth now. Such a comprehensive look into a lot of aspects of my limited knowledge on the case, and I appreciate it. A few theories off the list and a bunch more added. The plot runs deep. Keep up the good work you do. Shout out to Brad. He says that he's got limited knowledge in the case, yet he's probably questioned more than some people have in the entire case from day one. So that's interesting. But yeah, Brad, if you're coming up with different questions or ideas, just take your time. Take your time. Because, yeah, a lot of comments in the last one. What else? Beatrice, excellent point of views and topics. You're welcome. There we go. And Indiana, final comment saying, the problem with the pressure washers, a pressure washer was photographed down at Lucin Pond, after Dylan's disappearance, but also at Dylan's farm. The pressure washer at Dylan's farm, which we all presumed was used to wash Dylan's red truck to clear of evidence, wasn't a tire from the truck over the pressure washer pipe. So the truck was removed after the pressure washer was used. Which pressure washer was it? Old or new? Well, when I saw the photos, the pressure washer hose wasn't underneath the tyre. It was just very close to it. But, like on the other side, not ran over. It was like around the outer part of the vehicle. Okay? So the car could have driven on in. You pulled the pipe all the way around around the car and then started doing whatever. That's the way I say it, okay? What else? Oh no, not long comments. Indiana says, so we have Dylan Rounds in Montello outside Saddle Saw Bar on a Friday using his newly bought pressure washer to wash his truck, according to Kurt Wadsworth, where it was then left on the back of Dylan's truck. Was Chase Venstra's statement of seeing Kurt and Dylan placing something into the back of Dylan's truck on a Sunday? Was it the pressure washer? If so, this contradicts Kurt Wadsworth's statement. This was on a Friday. So we had the pressure washer here, then a pressure washer then at Dylan's farm. So what of the pressure washer left at Lucin Pond, which one is it? An older one or Dylan's newly bought pressure washer? Given the activity around the pond and a statement made that there was possible blood to be seen in Lucin Pond. True. And with the latest visit by Candice and dogs just lately, was a possible hit made by dogs at Lucin Pond. Right, okay. Indiana, when you say with the dogs recently at Lucin Pond and Candice Cooley, where did you get that from? Like, what I've referred to myself, what I've documented on my channel, okay? The last time Candice Cooley was out there near Lucin Pond, where a sheriff was as well an hour before the family or part of the family got there, that was the 21st of May. 21st of May. Before Dylan's 1 year anniversary, okay? That's the last time I'm aware of family going down there. So, are you referring to the same date, Indiana, as what I just said then? If so, where did you hear it about the dogs being taken down to the area? Because I've not heard anything about dogs in the area recently. Just after the anniversary, the 1 year one of Dylan Rounds in May 2023. When a few of those interviews followed, like on the East Idaho News channel, Candice Cooley, that was the first ever time she referred to the dogs going out there, and she said it as over the course of months. So she's referring to the past over a few months, when dogs came down to these certain areas, which Candice Cooley did not confirm as to where exactly. Dogs acted out as if they found something and they all reacted the same way. So there was a level of consistency, though no forensics were done in those areas at the time. So the way she worded it was, it's all in the past, but it's only being talked about now, which is interesting. So Indiana, do you know something we don't? Let me know if you know or if you can explain, okay? The bit about the pond with blood in it, I've never heard that ever before. Nowhere. Not in any news articles, no police reports, no documents, no interviews, no Candice Cooley, just in Facebook. I've not heard it ever before. The first person to mention it in my chat some days ago now was by a new viewer called RY something, new to the channel and everything, and yet they seem to know this, which was a bit interesting. And they said that they also found footage which was from YouTube, which they watched earlier on in the day or so, and it was to do with footage of Lucin Pond with blood in it, and it's been uploaded to YouTube. And it's like, oh, should it be on YouTube? Why is it on YouTube? Where is it? Who uploaded it? Do you know the name of the channel? And he said he was going to go and find it and he'll get back, but he never, or they never gave an update. So, RY, did you ever find that video of the pond with blood in it? Yes? No? Let me know your thoughts. And maybe there was a couple of other people in the chat that knew about it as well. Maybe Guidance, maybe Indiana, but where did you hear it from, though? You know, if someone like me had no clue about it, yeah, I've covered a case for quite some time, but then you got the odd individual that comes in just recent, brand new to the case, and yet knows about it. What am I missing? You get what I'm saying? Surely I would have heard something about it with the amount of time I've spent on the case. Yeah, I just haven't. So, where did it originate from this? Is this another Candice Howard, Shack Lady discussion with like the biological matter in the grain shed or the blood on the backhoe, but then it vanished? You know, are we going through all that sequence again? I don't know. Just let me know your thoughts, okay? Finally, if the second hit by the dogs was down at Lucin Pond, then it may be logical that Brenner pressure washed something down there, whether it was Brenner's truck before setting it off to Don's or Dylan's truck after the event, where Brenner returned it to Dylan's farm, where the area around the truck was then pressure washed, with no pressure washer to remove any boot prints. So which pressure washer was which? Anyone? So a lot of talk about pressure washers still to this day, right? Just let me know your thoughts in the chat to what you think. It appears, besides Indiana's long comment, we've read them all, so that's all good. Now we can move on. And I said about going onto the maps, and maybe we can incorporate it with the pond right now. Let's head on over to Google Earth now. So here we are, just on the maps, just as I like narrate over. You know, for upcoming videos, stuff we can look at, focus into, such as events. Yes, that can be done. I'm just, I don't know, maybe awaiting a bit more background depth. If not, I'll just have to work with what I've got and then generate ideas from there. I'm sure it'll work either way. And that's to do with the event on the 29th, which supposedly occurred, the fishing trip with Brenner and Don Hatley. Wouldn't surprise me if it did happen. Is there a real reason behind it? I mean, where did it originate from would be my question. Did it truly happen, or was it used as an alibi to mask the true intentions? Sure, they were supposedly going fishing or going to an area to do fishing. If we knew exactly which one it was, maybe that's the area where they disposed of Dylan. Normally when you do fishing, you're going somewhere to catch something. You don't always put it back in. I know some people do, but not everyone. Maybe in this case, it wasn't about taking something, it was about adding something. So, Dylan. So, I think that could be the next possible video idea map discussion we can look at again. It might be a bit vague, but so just work with what we got. I mean, my question would be, when it comes to fishing, where would you be fishing? You wouldn't be fishing in a wash, right? Because a wash isn't always filled with water. But a place like Lucin Pond, let me just make sure we're facing the correct way. A place like Lucin Pond, where it's constantly got water in it, would be more suitable. Though Lucin Pond itself, I don't believe has any fishes in there, but maybe other ponds elsewhere do. I remember when people were talking about the fishing thing, like a fishing pond where Dylan would go. So Dylan's farm being here, as you see, and down south towards Little Pigeon Mountains, nearby, you got a pond down here, as you can see. Now, people refer to this as Dylan's Pond or Dylan's Fishing Pond. So Dylan would go down here to fish? I'm not sure. But I only brought it up now because, sometimes there can be misunderstandings with time where people could be talking about an event which did happen, but just talking about the wrong people involved. So maybe when they said Dylan's Fishing Pond, they meant to say, or what's been said nowadays as the pond where Don Hatley and Brenner went to fish, right? Sometimes the events can get mixed up with one another. Other times it's the people involved in them. But maybe we can make more sense of it in a more dedicated video, if you get what I'm saying. So, is there any other areas we need to really focus on within Lucin? I don't think so at this moment in time, okay, because we have looked quite far and deep, to be honest. I mean, the bit about Don Hatley's trailer, the location of it, it still seems to be in question till this day, and I just don't understand why is it so difficult to provide coordinates, right? And someone could say, well, if you keep badgering on about it, then why don't you know? Well, it's like, well, because one doesn't have an answer. And the only way to get an answer is if you ask a question. But the question isn't being answered, so there's no answer. What do you do? I mean, some people give some answers, but then they're countered by others, and then it cancels everything out, and then you're still left back at square one. So, Montello, quite a vast area, of course. Cobre, Peacock, Peaks, Murdoch Mountain. I remember a comment a couple of videos ago in the section of the comments where someone was saying how much of Montello has been searched when looking for Dylan Rounds. I mean, can definitely say the mountain range more to the border, but to be honest, Bald Eagle Mountain on here at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as it states on here, Bald Eagle Mountain is more on the Lucin side, in the Utah side of the border, as you can see with that dotted line going down. But maybe if you didn't know exactly where the boundary border was, you'd probably say, oh, well, I'm on this side of the mountain side, so I'm still in Montello, Nevada. But on the maps, it's not exactly classified as it here. But I'm sure, well, not sure, I know that these areas have been searched. Bald Eagle Mountain, a little bit of Pilot Mountain, whatever you call it, because we've seen the footage by Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly, Scott Natal, Les Natal, Alan, Heavy D and his crew. They've all been around this area looking about, going into mines, as many as they can get into, and mine shafts, trying to look for Dylan Rounds, right? So you could say that's kind of, well, it's mostly been checked. What about the lower ground areas? What about the outer skirt, the desert? I don't know. As for the wash, because they did say that something to do with the wash in Montello, Nevada being searched, which would be Luray Wash. Is it this one here? Or is this the other named one? Sometimes the names don't always come up immediately. But basically, you see how the wash goes into the other side of the border. The Montello, Nevada side. That was supposedly searched previous in the early days. Supposedly Lance Kelly joined in and assisted with handling cadaver dogs. Even though he wasn't trained, yet he handled them at the time and helped Candice Cooley out, as the story went. And yet you fast forward now, Candice Cooley calls out Lance Kelly at any point. yeah, I guess things soured and went wrong, or that story in the past never happened. It's a bit weird, isn't it, right? Why does someone handle cadaver dogs into the wash area if they're not trained? I don't quite understand that. Maybe it's just simply guiding them into the wash and then the dogs do their own thing. But if they needed guided in, then where were the actual handlers to begin with at the time? That's another question. It's a bit weird. But I think most of it hadn't been searched. And we can actually do a poll right now just to see what you think. It's a very vague one, okay? So out of the area and outskirts of Montello, as you see on screen, besides Lucerne, the poll can be, how much of Montello, Nevada has been searched in the name of looking for Dylan Rounds? The percentages. 25% or under of Montello land has been searched. 50% or under has been searched. 75% or under has been searched, or 100% of Montello land has been searched. Feel free to vote right now. Just based off what you know, or it be brief knowledge or not, just feel free to vote, okay? So we know what your thoughts are, okay? What percentage would I pick? Wow. I'd say 25%, roughly 25% has been searched. I think there's a lot more open ground to look at, which hasn't really been done. Will it be done? Not anytime soon. If the focus is on, in the parents' mindsets, Dylan is in Lucerne, that's where they're going to be searching. If there is a new lead which points in a different direction, or to get to that point realization of, we've looked absolutely everywhere, there is nothing more we can do here, that's when they'll probably branch on and move into the likes of Montello, Nevada, possibly. That makes sense, yeah? But, with it all being the same environment and kind of terrain, it can all look the same as one another. So over a course of time, when looking through it all, it might desensitize you, or it just, it impairs your vision or your judgment at times with the heat as well. If you had a city landscape and then right next to it a bit of desert landscape, and then next to it ice, mountains, all completely different from one another, all contrasting, easier to know which area you're in and which area differentiates from one another. When it all starts looking the same, I think that can get a little bit confusing possibly, and even levels of frustration, constantly going through miles of dirt, terrain, stumbling over countless rocks. Yeah, I think it could have some kind of psychological effect on you when it comes to searching about. I think so. Does anyone have thoughts or feelings that in the early days of the case it felt a bit more alive, it felt a bit more positive, it felt like there was a bit more direction? Maybe not so much directly in the case, but within the community, people knew what they were doing, they had the different roles and ideas. Some were out searching, others were out theorising, some were just keeping the case alive. Was it more like that back then, or has it always been a bit messy? What's your thoughts? I really can't comment on the early days, because in the early days I just came on in a month late and started thinking outside of the box whilst everyone else was focused on particular stuff. Maybe that stuff people were focused on back then is what I'm looking at now, or portions of it, but at least now there isn't as much noise or disruption, so I guess it makes things a little bit more efficient. But I just wanted to give you my thoughts and my ideas with the map and possible directions we can head in. And there is at least one more event we can look at on here, and that'll be coming at some point soon or so. So if we just put that aside now, we need to focus on Bette Hayward. Technically kind of applies to the Dylan Rounds case, because I think that's maybe where Bette Hayward originated from, or where her channel came about, her presence more now, or at least towards the start of the Dylan Rounds case, kind of like with Jim Terry Pancakes, etc., etc. Maybe guidance as well. Not all channels set up because of the Dylan Rounds case, but maybe a greater concentration on more videos produced and high levels of activity publicly online by some of these people, okay? And we've looked at a few different characters in recent time. We've looked at Bob Farrell, we've looked at Miss T, Guidance, we've looked a bit at Mr. X, Pancakes with Time, just to try and make sense of the situations, right? And even provide future predictions as to how things can play out, right? I think what I would say at this moment in time right now, it feels like the drama has eased off a little bit, that more alliances have come together as one. So the divide is still present, but not as fragmented. Is it long lasting? I have no clue. I mean, it could have some fracture points within, but personally, what I would say, in the past, you had drama between Pancake's community and him, with Jim Terry, their community, and Mr. X, kind of going at it with one another, and then maybe some internal conflicts down the line, and then the odd other YouTuber in between caught up in it, like Shack Lady, and maybe the odd other person, right? It happened. Though, if you compare it back then to now, it seems as if it's Jim Terry, Mr. X, with whoever they've got at this moment in time around them, in conflict with just about everyone else, which is very interesting. And that conflict applies to families out there which have interacted with Jim Terry in the past. They've supposedly united together now. Some former Jim Terry members and viewers and contributors that have branched away, parted ways, and now in line with the others against Jim Terry. Pancake's audience as well, some of them, and so on. It just seems like it's not as fragmented now. But Pancakes himself kind of has gone quiet in a way, but then again, that might just simply be because he's not on YouTube, maybe. But then again, Jim Terry is on Rumble with Mr. X, and yet the drama still continued, maybe more heightened since, maybe. But does it make me feel that if the drama fades away with Pancakes, that Pancakes might start voicing his opinion more, or saying more out of line stuff, or rattling some people just to get a little bit of noise and direction aimed his way, so it kind of spices things up again? You never know. You never know. When things start fading away and that the silence emerges, that's where it's like, right, what do I do now? Do I act in this way, say that, so then it can relight the fire, or do I just let it fade out into darkness? That's what some people will be thinking when they're in those situations, and maybe Pancakes could be in one at the moment, unless he focuses on whatever he's up to and, you know, the topics. But there's been times in the past where Pancakes said, I'm quitting YouTube, had enough with this petty behaviour. That was a key word, that, petty. Been used a lot. Oh, I need to walk away. Yeah, that's it. And then he's come back. Repeat, repeat, repeat. But then on Rumble as well, I'm going to branch away from Jim Tay, Mr. X. I've said what's been said. We need to move on to the topics and cases. I've got no more room, energy. I've got no more breath for Jim Tay, Mr. X. No, we've got to move on now. It's time. And then next video, covering Jim Terry's brother or something like that, covering Mr. X. This, you know, still ongoing. So you could argue false promises made in a way. I mean, as you see with me, I've not been like, oh, I need to get away from this. I need to run away. I have had enough. Oh, I'm never going to do it ever again. I've not said that for good reason, because I've still done videos to this day. Relevant and a reason behind them, of course, yeah. Maybe some people make false promises, others don't, because they don't make promises in the first place. Sometimes that's a bit more stable, to be honest. But yeah, that's just a little backstory, a little bit of predictions ahead of how things are playing out there with the dark versus the light. Now, what about Bette Hayward? Is she stuck in between it all? In between this conflict, not knowing what side to choose, or not being able to choose a certain side because of fear of being attacked or suppressed, repressed? Maybe. Is it a Miss T situation, or is it something completely different? Is Bette Hayward in a position like the Shack Lady where she's got to pick a side but she doesn't want to, so if she doesn't then she becomes an enemy of everyone? You know, we've got to look at it in these different ways, okay? But before we even get to that point, what we've got to introduce is, who is Bette Hayward? Now, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to know the ins and outs because I'm not on the inside. I'm not a part of the darkness, so I wouldn't know. What I'm aware of is Bette Hayward does have a headband. It is very elastic. And she supposedly runs a farm called Hayward's Farm. That's what I know of. I'm aware that Bette Hayward does have a good sense of humour and she can roll with things and go with the flow, so that's also good. I'm aware to an extent that Bette Hayward doesn't snap like how others do. I'm aware she doesn't drag too much dark clouds over if she does come into my chat, as maybe what other people would do here and there. So I'm aware of that, okay? It's not the greatest in-depth review of Bette Hayward, but it's just an honest one based off my experiences and encounters with her, just like how I've done with, you know, other people over time, okay? I'm sure people watching right now will know more about Bette Hayward or have been around her more, maybe in the past, to get a better idea. And you can share your thoughts down below, okay? But the position of Bette Hayward, that's the other important question. The position as in conflict of mind, interest, tension, friction with others out there. If that was the case, is Bette Hayward in that position? You know, like Miss T was at some point, trying to branch away, but still caught up entanglement, deep-rootedness. As you pull away, someone else pulls from a different direction who's interlocked with that original creator. Gets a bit messy. Is Bette Hayward in that situation? I mean, let me know your thoughts down below. As for the position she is in terms of the hierarchical structure, she's more up there within the dark side, more up there with the likes of Jim Tay, Mr. X, not at the top, but kind of underneath, maybe around where Miss T was and possibly Robbie and the other individual, right? And how can that be demonstrated? Well, you know, being punctual on the shows quite often in the past on YouTube, just about everyone, her showing up, talking, interacting with maybe people in the chat or just Mr. X, Jim Tay. Like you see the call-in panels, she would be there with her face, looking all over the place like usual and like listening in mostly. So there was that. And maybe there was background stuff, but I'm not going to know the background stuff because I wasn't there, nor am I now. So I wouldn't know that. But Bette Hayward, in a way, like shout outs to Jim Terry. Betty having her own YouTube channel with most of the videos being dedicated to edits and recaps of Jim Terry's shows, like highlight reels to acknowledge Jim Terry, Mr. X, and to let other people know about the stuff and provide the odd update of maybe upcoming live streams, maybe more so in recent time because of heading on over to Rumble. So maybe Bette Hayward played a bit of a role in the transitional stage of getting people to go on over to Rumble to continue that journey and learning and understanding of Jim Tay and the news provided there. So they're just like a few little examples to demonstrate the hierarchical structure, whilst the masses just followed, okay, and listened and maybe nodded the head at the same time, okay? Did Bette Hayward ever appear as a hardliner? Not really. You could say she appeared quite supportive of Jim Tay, Mr. X, right? Just in like when responding back to criticism, counterpoints, there was there, but there was also a level of that missing snap attitude, which some of the other hardliners do display across all boards of communities, where it's a bit more volatile, right? And I think just before we go any further, okay, because I probably should have mentioned it a bit more at the start of this, so it's clearer for people to understand. At least from my knowledge and my encounters with Bette Hayward, at least for the last 2 weeks, I think, maybe more, I personally haven't seen Bette Hayward on my channel. course, probably busy elsewhere, or maybe on Jim Terry's channel, Mr. X, whether they do separate channels or just the focused one on Rumble. But I wasn't too surprised because, you know, Bette Hayward has been busy in the past, busy Betty, as we said, with whatever in the background, but on top, other YouTube related stuff, and Rumble being in a position there. If you're higher up on the hierarchical list, you're probably going to have more roles and more responsibilities in a way. Kind of like maybe what Miss T was in at the time, where wasn't able to do this or attend that because of the Jim Terry, Mr. X related task and objectives that needed to be fulfilled. Maybe that's applied to Bette Hayward in recent time. That's why she's not really been active. I'd say, in a way, arguably she's been missing in action. I wouldn't just use the term missing, because if you say that, it's going to get out of proportion and people are going to genuinely think that Bette Hayward has gone missing. Missing on the farm? We're not going down that route. That's not exactly appropriate to say in this video. But I'd say missing in action. Online presence quiet. At least on my channel, at least from what I've seen. Sure, in recent time we've seen a wave of new viewers coming on in, accounts I've never seen before. Where did they come from? Probably Jim Terry's channel, maybe Bella V's channel. I think some of them like Crazy Brat, and the odd other individual, maybe Motor City at some point. So you get those people coming on in. Some are regulars, others are just temporary. When it came to Bette Hayward at the time, it was a little bit here and there, and then it was a bit more frequent, and then it just went quiet completely. I'm referring to Bette Hayward's actual account, you know, the Bette Hayward. Because I know in the past we've had fake accounts, we've had all kinds of weird stuff going on and impersonation people, where it seems as if someone is appearing in a live stream as the actual channel, but it's just a fake one. It's some random channel out there. We went through that whole phase in the past, and it has ended ever since, but it was a messy time. It was a bit weird. I guess one thing that can be said is just shout out to the channels that were patient and didn't act too abruptly in trying to understand who is who. That was good, because some like fake accounts out there were acting in bad ways to get someone else in trouble. So you can see the effects it could have had, but it didn't lead to that, so that's good. And I think most people were okay in the end. Still a weird time. But as for Bette Hayward, I've not seen any fake accounts of Bette Hayward, or like alternative accounts where someone could be behaving like her, but it's not her. From at least my knowledge, okay, I've not come across that, okay? I mean, you never know, at times here and there I could miss something or miss a sign, but that's only because I'm just focused on the Dylan Rounds case, right? If that's the first thing I look at and think about, and then the other stuff, the drama and the other conflicts are second or third, I'm not going to be as like snappy as some people are, right? It's just one of those things. At least I'm focused on the right stuff. But still, give time to look at other things in the background, because it can still be kind of important, right? And I guess the importance is trying to understand what's happened to Bette Hayward. Why is she missing in action? Where has she been for the last 2 weeks? And no, I'm not going to be making calls 24/7, desperately whining and saying, where are you? Where are you? Come here now. You know, you belong here. No, not like that. Just a simple question, because as you've seen within the case and mysteries I've done, a little bit of noise, a little bit of coverage, some people end up reaching out down the line with a possible answer. Maybe that can happen again, like now or in a month or two later. But whilst it's also trying to understand what's happened to Bette Hayward, it's also trying to make sense and possibly get to grips with what situation is she in. Is she in the situation like Miss T, or more locked in like Robbie, or, you know, somebody else? You know, the overall theme, is Bette Hayward trapped, or is she floating around like a fish with enough space? Is she in a fish tank, aquarium, or is she in the ocean? Sure, if she was in the ocean, that can still be troubled waters because you don't want to get clunked on the head by a sinking submarine. That can be problematic for both parties. But when you're in an ocean, there can be sharks. Dylan Round's community, shark-infested waters at times. You go the wrong way, you get bit by one of the sharks. Okay? Maybe that's happened to Bette Hayward, right? I guess what you got to ask yourself is the type of resistance. If Bette Hayward is in a particular situation, scenario, based off a possible theme of being trapped, enclosed, suppressed, silenced, it can also tie in theme with type of resistance. Silenced, i.e. being threatened, being blackmailed, emotional blackmail, being persuaded to go in a different direction or to remain as one is in that place and not to go elsewhere for a greater cause, a reason behind it, that level. Is there a form of thought process, a form of persuasion, persuasive resistance, manipulative resistance, natural resistance? What type? Is it physical or verbal? I'd say it's probably more verbal, whether it be phone calls, text messages, emails, even on YouTube, however people communicate, right? Most likely behind the scenes, of course, because it wouldn't be done in public sight, no. So if it's more verbal, is there a way, well, first of all, is the verbal resistance, what's the severity of it, right? Maybe like in Miss T's situation previous, the verbal communication online and the resistance met has been to a certain degree of severity just simply because of potential threats, warnings, a bit of paranoia kicking in, a bit of high alert levels, what's going to happen next, right? Sure, it is just words at the end of the day, but it can be followed up with action. And every now and then you might come across that one odd individual that will perform an action, so you got to be on the lookout. Is Bette Hayward in deep waters? Not quite like Kathy Waters, but deep waters, i.e. in a situation where, I mean, if you used to visualize it, symbolize it as if Bette Hayward was in the Marianas Trench, her leg wrapped around a chain, can't free herself. A couple of sharks are lurking above, circling her. She tries to make noise to move away. Those sharks might get alerted and come after her, possibly. If that's the situation, okay, entrapped. Is entrapment a word? It sounds like one, but it's probably not. It wouldn't surprise me. But submerged in a level of darkness, trapped in a chain of entanglement, resistance, shock collars almost. How do you break away from that? What if Bette Hayward was in that scenario? I said, it all depends, right? Because sometimes if you're higher up on the hierarchy, it can go one of two ways. One, there can be more leniency towards you because they favour you more than the general public. There might be a greater understanding and reasoning behind the interactions that go on in the background. Maybe that applies to Bette Hayward. If not, because you're higher up and they know more about you, you may know a bit about them. It's a bit more personal. You're more of a known figure. You're more well-known compared to a random everyday person that just simply watches in the chat section, right? If Bette Hayward pulls away, there could be a positive of understanding Mr. X, Jim Terry understanding Bette Hayward wanting to go in a different direction, to look elsewhere, to look up to somebody else, whatever it may be. That understanding because they're in a line with one another more than a simple viewer. If that isn't the case, and it's more, I'm gonna move away, nope, you're not doing that, it's because Bette Hayward is more known. The more known you are, the harder it is to hide, right? The more known you are, the harder it is to slip away. So how do you actually slip away? How do you lay low? I mean, the most extreme method is just to simply cut all contact and to not even go online. Extreme case scenarios, but sometimes Extreme scenarios equal extreme measures, right? So is Bette Hayward in that position? Could that explain why she's missing in action, at least from my perspective? Maybe. I mean, sometimes you don't have to know the actual story to get an idea of things. If you just look at body language, behavior, or the lack of it, or the extreme change in activity, you know that there's something wrong. Either something wrong with them or something wrong in the background, something that could impact them in a negative way, right? That can happen. You look for these signs, you look for these patterns, and there are anomalies or a sudden break, a change in everything, routine, and you think, oh, what's going on here? You know, you can even apply it to the Dylan Rounds case, right? When you had Dylan Rounds, okay, you know, calling his family here and there throughout the days before he went missing about what he was getting up to, what he was going to do next, and so on, so on. But when the day came where he said he was going to respond back later, but never did, family, the odd one like Candice Cooley, got a bit concerned, confused, reached out to other family members. They all said the same thing, and then they were like, this ain't normal. Something's happened. We need to check. Is that like the situation with Bette Hayward right now, where levels of activity, being punctual on certain shows, or in the comments not being present no more, has something happened? Makes you think, right? Would you jump to the conclusion of, yeah, kidnapped, locked in a boot, sent to the scrapyard, or Bette Hayward buried in a cornfield, and then corn's going to grow out the ground in memory of Bette Hayward, with owls growing on the perch? No, I don't think it's to that extreme, but I think maybe a level of deep thought processing, working out and calculating what happens next, right? Do I go this way? No, because it could lead to that. Do I go that way? No, because it could lead to this. Oh, I'm going round in circles. What happens next? Okay. I think you got to look back and understand how much resistance are you facing? Is it from all angles or just the odd side? I would say if it was to refer back, okay, hopefully Miss T is watching right now. I would say Miss T was probably in a more sticky, harder situation because she was possibly, you could say, being attacked or being looked at in a negative way from all sides and different angles and perspectives. So when you do break away, it's harder to go from there. Where do you go if more people dislike you or more people are just a bit wary and cautious because of where you once associated? It's harder in that scenario. Yet from the looks of it, Miss T has managed in some way or another, right? So when you look at Bette Hayward, although arguably a part of the dark side, doesn't seem to be referred to as much or hated to the same extent. So you could say if Bette Hayward was to break away, maybe it wouldn't be as rough. You base it off if Miss T was in a similar situation or arguably a little bit more difficult or a bit more complex in different ways, but she managed, then maybe Bette Hayward can. When I said, when looking at patterns, you can look at patterns to acknowledge when something's gone wrong. You can look at patterns to acknowledge when something goes right and how you can follow that and get the same results. That's what I would say. Just a random observation to make because I didn't mention it at the time, but I've just thought of it now. Hopefully Miss T is present right now. As for backstories of guidance, don't know too much, but obviously things have happened in the past, not all good. But when looking at Miss T, whether it be the facial expressions, the body language, the behavior, the tone of voice, the pace of voice, when I saw it in the odd video or so, I would never have known they've experienced bad stuff, which can demonstrate a form of control over themselves, even when it might be hard to, or when they've got no choice to, but they show a form of control and some form of resilience. Could you make comparisons to Candice Cooley, but not in an insulting way? Possibly, well, at least from what I've seen at least, because, when people are seeing Candice Cooley, okay, gone through bad stuff and like going through bad stuff because of Dylan's son going missing and being murdered. That's pretty messed up. But Candice Cooley hasn't really reacted too much. She's kept a bit of a straight face, but kept on taking action in some way or another, right? Obviously, people do react in different ways, etc. But like with Miss T, when it comes to either things that she's recently encountered or the past stuff, it's not really, well, you could, I'm not in a position to say, but you could say it might have taken a toll. But in terms of how she presents herself in the videos, it's not really impacted it there. So I wouldn't know from the beginning, which is a positive in itself. Okay, so put that aside. So in terms of levels, types, and amounts of resistance, you apply that to Bette Hayward. Is Bette Hayward receiving the same amount of resistance as Miss T was? Is Bette Hayward receiving the same format of resistance as well, and the same intensity? If so, it's still possible to break the cycle, break the chains if needed, if wanting to. If in a position where it's less resistance, in a way, then technically it's even easier. But what happens? What happens if it is just a little bit more harder? What happens if it's a bit of a hybrid situation, pros and cons? The pro is Bette Hayward maybe not as hated or not seen as much in a dark way, but the con is deeper rooted entanglement, more tied in with Jim Terry or something, so it's even harder to pull away. I mean, what can be done? Well, one or the other. One method, suppressive fire. The second, the tug of war. And people are going to be really confused as to what I'm talking about, but it will make sense. The form of suppressive fire, if you think of the World War II films where they're in the trenches and maybe one of the allies is stranded in the middle of the battlefield or in one of the enemy trenches and they've got to get back to where they came from, but they're caught in a line of fire, crossfight. Where do they go? They've got to lay low, they've got to keep their head down. They can't move really, they can't really breathe, because if they do, it'll alert the enemy. If they do just rush it and just take their chances, they could get caught in the line of fire. It's just, they're literally suppressed, locked down, suppressed, repressed. There's no movement. What can one do? Though if counter suppressive fire is emitted from the allies or people that know Betty or, on neutral terms, that suppressive fire possibly being seen as a distraction, some kind of method, which then catches the attention of their enemy, the dark side, in which Bette Hayward just simply slips on out and go off that way without anyone noticing. Could I explain missing in action? Or could I explain the future, the reality, the outcome? That's one way. The second format, tug of war, is more direct, where people, ex-Jim Terry followers, reach on out, like with a rope, and pull her out if she's stuck. These are all symbolisms, microcosms, but they can be applied, right? And would it work? It's probably more messy. It could lead to collateral damage. Maybe that's not good, but it's still a method. Sometimes with force, it can lead to an outcome, but at what cost? That's what you got to ask yourself. There's different methods, that's what I would say. Any others in between? I mean, do you know what you could say? If you are caught in the line of fire and you was to keep your head down long enough, eventually both sides of the different forces will run out of ammunition. And once they've run out of ammunition of words, whilst they're reloading, thinking of what to do, say next, that could be the time to move, to run, possibly. I mean, as a form of new direction in the making, works going on in the background, that would be Bob Farrell. Bob Farrell appearing as the new person to the throne, or acting on behalf of Jim Terry, Mr. X, or allowing them onto YouTube, because when it comes to Jim Terry, Mr. X now, they're kind of like in a situation like Candice Cooley. Not 100%, but kind of, in that they are allowed, they're given a platform to come on and to speak their mind and their thoughts. Bob Farrell being the YouTuber, the channel, to allow these guys on, and then they can talk. Kind of like how Doug from No Thanks allowed Candice Cooley onto his channel to talk and let everyone know what's going on, because maybe not everyone goes onto alt platforms. People gather on YouTube because it's the most popular one, and it's like by default to people to look at for news and updates. So that's where it is there. So whether there be drama or not, it is a deeper, closer focus to setting Bob Farrell up and maybe the other person in between. That could be a form of distraction, a form of slipping away from the back door. That's another method, right? That said, all these methods are because of potential resistance. If one isn't facing resistance, then those far step actions aren't really needed, right? Those actions are in place if one wants to follow them, or if one has no choice to. You get what I'm saying? When it comes to Bette Hayward's personal activity, that sounds a bit dodgy, that the way I said it. Let me reword it. When it comes to Bette Hayward's online presence on different channels, I don't know where she goes, okay? Because I'm focused on the Dylan Round stuff, but she has in the past called in on the channel here and shared a few thoughts and also been lighthearted, which is fine, not really disruptive, okay? Maybe she's like that elsewhere too. When she has defended people, even if it might be the unfavourable ones or the dark side, when she has defended them, she's not like instantly resorted to pure insults, from at least what I've seen. And she hasn't instantly resorted to maybe some of the nasty behaviour you might see elsewhere. Okay? Some people out there could criticise Bette Hayward and say, why are you defending this person? Why are you defending them if they've done this or they've done that? Well, either because Bette Hayward is in a position where she can't go against it because of being trapped, or at least at the time she wasn't aware of that stuff or wasn't really thinking too much about it. I mean, there's different outcomes and possibilities. I'm just giving a very vague selection of them on the spot because we could be here all day really analysing it all, okay? So there's that. Maybe how she acts and behaves elsewhere is why there isn't as much resistance, hatred externally towards her, possibly. But as a cost of that support, though, has led to a deeper rooted bond or unintentional, unplanned connection between the dark side. Is this like a scenario of Star Wars and there needs to be some kind of invasion? Probably not, okay? Someone going to suddenly come out and say, I'm your daddy? Whoa, easy there, Betty. Calm down. Yeah, who knows? But this is just trying to loosely make sense of things. Maybe there are people watching right now, possibly in the same situation as Bette Hayward, or maybe far from it and completely worse off. Those watching in the background right now, welcome. Those lurking in the darkness, I understand it might be a difficult time or situation to say, yes, I'm in this scenario. I'm facing this resistance. I get that. I'm aware people are in the background right now, other people, okay? If any of these steps or methods have been helpful, maybe try and put them in place if needed, if appropriate, okay, and suitable regarding you. And yeah, I think we'll leave it there. If you have suddenly joined and you want to hear about the Dylan Rounds deep focus discussion, make sure to rewind back to the beginning. Maybe Bette Hayward might show up in time, whether be she's laying low at the moment or busy just simply with other activities and stuff going on in the background. Maybe down the line she will make a presence known and we might see the farmer appear from the ground once again. but it's a moment in time. Bette Hayward missing in action. If there are any updates down the line, I'll provide updates, okay? But for now, that's my knowledge of what's happened from my experiences, my opinion. Yours might vary, that's fine. You can leave your comments down below, leave your questions, leave your grievances. It doesn't matter, just feel free to comment. And if you want to, feel free to share and like the video. So let's leave it there for now and see what twists and turns occur next. And even with the Dylan Browns case, you never know. Thanks for watching, goodbye, and good night for now.